Hey everyone, another quick reminder of our anxiety workshop that's going on January 15th. So this month at 7 o'clock, we're going to be having that anxiety workshop at the office, and I just wanted to remind you, and I'm really excited to be able to help so many people with their anxiety issues and helping them overcome those things. So I just wanted to remind you guys that that is going on. Seating's going to be limited, so if you are interested, please RSVP so I can make sure that you're going to have a seat when you show up. But all week we've been talking about little bits of information that we'll be talking about at the workshop. And I just wanted to make sure to give you guys some information before you got here so that you kind of know what we're going to be talking about. And that's also another way to see if you're actually interested in what we have to say. So if you're finding yourself saying the anxiety workshop might be good, but I'm not quite sure what it's going to be about, this guy just keeps talking about it, go back to our videos since about the first of the year I've been posting about anxiety and see if this stuff resonates with you, and then you would know, okay, yeah, this sounds interesting, let's go ahead and RSVP for that. But tonight what I'm going to talk about is specifically a Moro reflex. And what a Moro reflex is, it's a reflex that you have as a baby. So it's the baby startle reflex. If you were to make a loud noise by a baby, what they do is they throw out their hands and kind of take in a big breath of air. And then they kind of shake their hands and they get really startled. And that's what a Moro reflex is. Or if you were to hold a baby and then kind of suddenly drop it, they do the same thing. They open up their hands, they take in that deep breath of air, and their heartbeat starts going up and their sympathetic nerve system starts reacting. So that's what the Moro reflex is. And the Moro reflex is really important for a baby to have for survival and even initiating the birth process. But what it's supposed to do is go away at about 4 to 6 months. And if it doesn't do that and you hold on to it, then you're walking around and your brain's walking around with this startle reflex. And you can tell that that's not going to be a good thing with anxiety. So many people with anxiety never get rid of this Moro reflex and they hold on to it. And it just creates this vicious loop of stimulating production of adrenaline and cortisol, which are your stress hormones. So a lot of the times, whether they're kid or adults, they typically will have two coping mechanisms if they have a Moro reflex. One is they're very withdrawn. They're withdrawn from difficult situations. They're withdrawn from socializing, affection, whether that's showing affection or receiving affection. They're just very withdrawn. Or it can be the complete opposite, and they become very aggressive. They're highly excitable. They're overreactive. They can be dominating. So those are typically two coping mechanisms people use with a Moro reflex. And like I said, this can be in kids, obviously, but it can also be retained into adulthood. This is actually a primitive reflex that I myself had up until about 2 years ago when I started getting really big into primitive reflex work. So it's absolutely a common thing for people to have. It's not uncommon for adults to still have these infant reflexes. So if retained into adulthood, you're going to have this free floating anxiety. You're going to have this excessive reaction to stimuli. You're going to have automatic responses to sudden stimuli, so loud noises. I can't tell you how much loud noises used to bother me when I had this Moro reflex. You could just feel your heart rate raise, and it would just really kind of have this unsettling feeling in you, whether like a door slammed or there's just loud noises. And then also changes in lighting, movement in your visual field, tactile contact. So if you think it can also make kids difficult with making decisions. So you can have difficulty making decisions if you have this. So there's all types of things, and it can obviously also affect school if loud noises are affected and visual fields affected. But when the Moro goes away, it's replaced by something called the Strauss reflex, which allows you to filter out irrelevant sounds and respond to relevant ones. So you can filter out background noise, but still hear when someone calls your name. Or if you think of it like a classroom, you can filter out that light that's humming, you can filter out the kid tapping his finger against the desk, and you can filter out all these background noises and still concentrate on what you're supposed to be doing. But if you don't have this Strauss reflex, then it's going to be really hard to be able to filter out that background information, and then you're going to lose you're going to lose your concentration and be distracted all the time. The Moro reflex, it can cause immature eye movements, visual problems, difficulty ignoring visual input, difficulty sustaining visual attention. So once again, that can go back to the classroom or even yourself at work. But The Moro reflex is a vestibular nature. That's your inner ear. It's your balance system. So you might also have poor balance, coordination, even motion sick. And then once again, in adulthood, if you still have this Moro, it's going to create constant stress. Body's going to go into that fight or flight state. So it's going to constantly be eliciting the startle reflex. And then when that happens repeatedly, you start producing excess cortisol, adrenaline. That's going to eventually fatigue out your adrenal glands. That can even lead to a weakened immune system and craving sweets and snacking, which is a result of having excess cortisol. So the Moro reflex essentially is going to set the tone to get rid of all of your primitive reflexes. It's been called the gateway reflex. A lot of kids that have the Moro reflex, they also have many other reflexes because that one usually sets the tone that when that goes away, other ones can start going away. So that's a little bit about the Moro reflex. We'll go more into that at the workshop, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of what you might be hearing. So if that sounds interesting to you, please go ahead and RSVP to the workshop. We'll have the link in the description, or you can click the Learn More button, and that'll take you to our Eventbrite page. I just want to make sure that you have a seat if you decide to show up that night. So with that, I hope you enjoyed that. Otherwise, have a great evening, guys, and I'm going to jump off. I will see you guys next time I go live.